Hi everyone, it's Talia from Zart Art, and today we're going to be creating a positive and negative space paper collage. So in an artwork, the positive space refers to the area in which the subject is positioned, and the negative space is the area around that. So you can think of it as positive space being the foreground and negative space might be the background. So to create our paper collage, we are going to begin by creating our background layer, which will come into the positive form when we overlay that background with our black paper. So to begin, I'm going to use paper strips. So I have some already made paper strips that are embossed, different colours, really nice to work with. If you don't have something like this to use, you can cut magazines into strips of paper, or you can create your own handmade paper to collage with as well. But I'm just going to apply some of these strips over my plain piece of cartridge paper using Super Tack to stick them down. Okay, so now I've got my paper collage done. As you can see, there's some overlap, so I'm just going to trim that off with some scissors. Of course, you can do any design you want on your piece of paper. You can simply paint some patterns on, you can draw patterns on, or you can create different kinds of collages. So as you can see, I've got my paper collage and I've got some really lovely textures from that paper. So my aim here is to create something that's colourful, which will create contrast with the black paper, which we're going to layer over the top. So we can leave our paper collage to the side, and now we're going to work on our black paper. So for our design, we're going to work with very simple shapes that we're going to cut out with a scalpel knife. So for my design, I'm going to do a bit of a tree of life design, so it's something with geometric shapes. You can talk to your students about using silhouettes, so something that's very, very simple. If you're working with younger students, then you can stick to some really simple shapes. So you could do some silhouettes of a face, silhouettes of different animals, even a leaf shape. But because I'm going to work at about a mid-level, I'm going to have my tree of life design with some really intricate shapes. The larger shapes you can cut out with scissors, but if you're doing something more intricate, then you will need a scalpel knife. So my tree of life design, I'm just going to draw on my black paper. Okay, so now I've drawn my design onto my paper. I've stuck to very simple shapes. So if you are wanting to use only scissors, then what I would do is start my drawing from the edge of your page and then work around and then finish back at the edge of your page, and make sure it's a large shape that you can cut around. But because I am using my precision cutting knife, I don't have to worry too much about being able to get my scissors around my design, which is why I've got some very thin areas which will be easy for me to cut out with the knife. So before we start cutting our design, you do want to make sure that you've got a cutting mat underneath so you don't cut into the table, and make sure you've gone through proper safety precautions and practiced using your cutting knife. If you are not confident, these are very sharp, so keep them away from your hand. And using your knife, simply start from one area, keep your hand out of the way, of where you're cutting, and with even pressure, you don't need to put too much force into it. If your knife is sharp, then it should cut quite easily from your black paper. And I'm just going to work in segments, so cutting a few areas and finishing them off, just so I can remove the paper easily as I go from section to section. Okay, so as you can see, I've finished cutting out my shapes. So we've got our little tree of life design here. Of course, you can add more or cut out some more areas if you want to, but I'm happy with how this design looks. And now our next step is to see how it looks over the top of our paper collage. So if you notice that some of the sides of your collage are sticking out a little bit, you can trim those down, but this looks like it will just fit, and I can trim it down after I've stuck it on, which will be our next step. So you can see where our positive and negative space is. So the areas that we've cut out, which represent our tree shape, once we put them on that colourful background, they really pop out, come to the forefront and create emphasis. So your eye is drawn to that colour, and that creates our positive space. Our negative space is created by this black background, which you can see is not drawing your eye because that contrast is created with the colour. Your eye is naturally drawn to the colour from that paper coming through the gaps. So our last step is just to simply add some super tack to the back of our paper and then paste that on. Okay, so I've stuck down all my areas of that black paper. So just make sure that if you've got anything sticking up, just add a little bit of glue. What you can also do is add a gloss layer, so something like a gloss Mod Podge or a gloss varnish. You can put that over the top to make sure that everything is stuck down, and you'll get a really nice shiny surface, and that will seal everything down really nicely. But otherwise, you can leave the project as is, trim off any edges if you need to, but that's our positive and negative space collage. Really great for teaching cutting skills, as well as differentiating between that positive and negative space in an artwork. So you can do this with levels from junior primary all the way up to senior primary or even secondary school if you create really intricate designs and focus on those cutting skills using a knife. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.